Thanks for joining the channel over at SubScribe. So why so many remakes? The summary is they don't make new stories because the new stories, when they do make them, on average, don't sell well because they're woke, i.e. they have far left-wing globalist storylines which are not organic. And that's kind of the binary between organic stories, which are inherently right-wing stories, and propaganda stories, left-wing stories. The common refrain from the woke cattle consumers on usually Twitter is that though I hear Instagram is allowing a little bit more free speech, is that they make new movies, but in the folksy comrade speak of y'all, they go, but y'all don't watch them. Yes, because they're gay, black, trans, Bolshevik propaganda with blonde man bad. When people say make new stories, the obvious implication is make good stories, which means make organic stories, not new ways of pushing Marxist propaganda. People don't want diverse brown BLTVQ3 pronoun stories. America is about half non-white now, and even the 43% of brown America doesn't want non-white stories. There's 150 million people. They could support all this kind of, Black Captain America type of stuff. That's a hard pill for woke Hollywood to swallow, and indeed, they are not swallowing that pill. The audience loves blonde people. They want the blue-eyed male hero because it rings true, where you have the explorer, adventurer, scientist, writer, all the cool stuff. Stories work because of verisimilitude. How far can you suspend your disbelief? If you ask for an image of a scientist, an inventor, a great writer, it's going to look like Elon Musk, something like that. Not Maya Angelou or something, because European people are awesome. Some would say the best. But also because that image of the fair blonde character, the elves in Tolkien's story, connects to the audience, where when you use diversity hires, it just doesn't ring true because their people and countries that they came from don't have the history of greatness like Europe does, mostly Western Europe, which, Eastern Europe, in their defense, has kind of been held back by communism, which consciously isn't politically correct to say these things aloud, obviously. This is a pretty selective audience, even on YouTube. But subconsciously, the viewer knows it's correct. Statistically, scientists don't look like Shuri. They're usually looking like skinny Englishmen. And even the left doesn't watch globalist propaganda, but they blame the right wing anyway. So they remake movies, or this actually is a pretty good article because they're talking about like remakes, reboots, and sequels, and then like requels. And basically what a lot of this is name recognition bait and switch. So what they do is the name recognition is the key thing, because that's most of your advertising already. Where if you took something like Gremlins, which there's a large group of people who saw Gremlins in theaters. I guess they'd probably be in their 50s now. Then there's another group who rented it in the 80s and 90s, and they'd be in their 40s. And even a percentage of younger people today who have downloaded it to have a little throwback 80s vibe. If they made a remake, they have the name recognition already out there. But the goal is to sell the tickets and then bait and switch. The movie will have trans, black girl, power, lesbians. The gremlin will be in a red MAGA hat. And the thing is, don't get me wrong, if I made the movie, there would be a way to throw in a red MAGA hat and make it funny. It's people are willing to laugh at themselves as long as you're throwing a grenade and it goes in all directions. And where Hollywood now is just out there with a sniping rifle. It would be so heavy-handed with, evil blonde people who are, selling the gremlin instead of in Chinatown or something, and poor, innocent, marginalized, and oppressed, and disenfranchised POC, BLT, all this kind of Marxists. It's like they try to cram everything. It's like Rose Tico's latest movie where they're trying to cram every little thing. $900,000 on 1,400 screens. Congratulations, Rose Tico. They take the simple charm of the original kids movie and then they insert heavy-handed anti-white, anti-Christian messaging and race swapping, And people are beyond fatigued with those people and that messaging. Oh no, the MAGA Nazi is deporting them back to their home countries. The horror. Why would it be so bad to go be around your own people unless you're saying that they're. Anyway, so now you're wondering, hey, just make new movies that aren't woke. Make classic organic stories. But they can't bring themselves to do that. Classic stories are race-based, tribal, nationalist, sometimes religious and patriarchal. All the things that these globalists who control the media have brainwashed people to think are negatives. Someone in the comments about the latest Hollywood remake that is in the works said the reason, and if you search that, you'll find out there's a lot of remakes, reboots, and prequel, sequel type of stuff that are on the way. They said the reason was every story had been told, which sounds reasonable for a millisecond until your logic kicks in. At first you think, well, there's something to the idea of central themes of human experience and storytelling structures, the hero's journey, and that kind of thing. And you realize, wait, that doesn't feel accurate. And it's clearly not. There's so much new stuff going on today. They're sending a rocket ship to Mars. Then they've been remaking some of the more innocuous 80s crap from Hollywood. They're retelling certain old Hollywood stories, a fraction of a percent of just Hollywood stories that would be available, much less the entire human experience of stories. No, stories are never told, because if they were, that would mean like the end of history. But he does have a point, because as we settle deeply into this transition from blood and soil nations of one people, where the English go off and do English things for the pride of the Queen of England and whatnot, into transitioning into just dystopian nightmare future economic zones. You own nothing, be happy, live in the pod, eat the bugs type of thing, populated by cattle debt slaves who are plugged into the Matrix, like a Philip K. Dick story. So yeah, history of the West is over. That's what globalism is all about. It's like the point of globalism is to destroy nations, natal nations. So no more stories about people, tribes, and nations, because that's not politically correct. We've entered the Matrix sometime over the past 50 years or more, and the history of the West has been winding down. Say in 1950, you tell some sci-fi story about space aliens, and America, England, Germany, and France go up there to meet them or do battle, and you'd have the British, German, and French from Europe, and in America it would be the same people who in 1950 were mostly English, German, Irish, and Polish. Those are the two main groups, and then the two main minorities were Irish and Polish, and then you've got a little bit from the rest of Europe. I guess you're asked out if you're Swedish American or something. You didn't have non-European diversity in there for political correctness points, or a mouthy girl boss with blue hair who did a holdo maneuver, which somehow nobody thought of the idea of mass times velocity squared, except a grammar school student who learns introductions to physics. A 50s sci-fi story would be organic, and it would connect to the viewer who's watching the members of his tribe tell some silly story about space monsters. The suspension of disbelief would be as powerful as it could be. Now insert the black sidekick, maybe two ugly women kissing in the background. That was in Star Wars, the Disney version of it. The mom strapping on her spacesuit to do battle, while the dad is nowhere to be seen. That was in Osaka, or one of those Disney, maybe Andor or something. It was in one of those Disney Plus streaming shows. And she leaves the kid alone on the space station. And then you add in like a Pakistani woman who's a super genius, and you get the idea. It's not organic storytelling. It's Hollywood propaganda reflecting the desires of Hollywood to replace European people around the world with nons. As above, so below. Hollywood is the biggest propaganda machine on earth, but it's losing its ability as people are finally deciding not to go to movies, and the mainstream machine is trying to massage that into saying, well, we're switching to like a streaming. People want to watch movies at home. That's yes, somewhat accurate. People don't want to go to the big screen to watch crap movies, where if they're going to watch mediocre movies, they'll watch them at home in the background. They're not really like when you go to a theater. I will say that's the one good thing about a theater experience is that you were in the theater experience. You're not scrolling your phone. You're just focused on the movie, the big screen. Where at home, you really have to kind of like put your phone in the other room, put your tablet in the other room, sit down and go, okay, I'm going to focus on this movie. And it's actually a little bit hard unless I literally put the phone in the other room type of stuff. Here's the thing for an example is doesn't anyone wonder why movies are so tightly constrained within this limited allowable spectrum? Why there aren't any nationalist movies at all anywhere? Imagine an Irish movie where they gather together to form groups to remove the new invaders and their corrupted government and return Ireland to the people who belong there type of film. Or a movie, I mean, you can't even imagine the thing. Or a movie fighting Islamic Malamin Say type of behavior. Nobody is curious about that giant blank spot on the map of here there be dragons of where nationalist movies should be or tribal movies. They never question why everything is diverse and has, why am I talking with my hands, and has so many non-Europeans in roles that don't make sense. That's the power of propaganda. They've been brainwashing people for so long that people learn to self-censor. Hey, why are these pox, woks, trans, furry, otherkin overrepresented in these movies? We don't want to see that. Those are not our people or our values. We want to see our people in tribal, organic stories. But that's the Hollywood machine programming you for your substitution. America is currently 57% of your tribe. When Hollywood started, it was 90%. Hollywood is not making stories for European Americans and white Americans, which I guess are two slightly different things. America is just an economic zone destroyed by globalists. So is it the end of storytelling? Yes, but not because the stories have been told, but because telling organic nationalist stories in a globalist controlled country is not politically correct. It would show people how much better America, Europe, Australia, Canada was, and how much worse it is now, and how dark the future is going to be. Stories now are shallow, written by rootless globalists with no shared history or blood. They're derivatives of derivatives. It reminds me of the difference between a book or movie by someone who was involved in a specific industry or by someone who wasn't and had just heard about it. If someone who is well studied on Greek or Norse mythology writes a derivative story, it's going to be better. But now, across the pantheon of modern stories, we have people who have learned their subject from stories written by people who didn't know what they were talking about when they wrote them in the first place. It's the Mags Visaggio school of punk rock storytelling, where they tell stories based on sci-fi and pop movies from the 80s, instead of going to the source and reading the original hero's journey that the movies were based on. So their stories have no point. I don't know what pronouns that person uses, and I don't know if I can get in trouble on YouTube for not using their preferred, usually biologically incorrect pronouns. So their stories have no beginning or end, no redemption arc, no lessons learned or growth. There's nothing to overcome and grow from. So there's no ascendancy of the spirit. It's just a few gay characters running around fighting the evil blonde male stereotypes, which are usually going to be their anger at their father being expressed in movies and comics. Nothing is rooted in reality. It's usually the opposite of reality. And there's a secondary issue of the left-hand path where Mags's stories are kind of deathcore, which sounds cool but isn't, because the characters are anti-life, anti-natal, anti-family. They're the found family Bolshevik concept that works in the story for a very limited time, but falls apart off-screen when the show is over. Because the gay trans characters don't have kids, start a family together, they sodomize each other and do drugs until they self-delete with an OD. The stories have no future and they have no hope. When the movie or book ends, the characters really die. Their own story is cutting off their branch, which does not interest the audience. Diverse stories are the same way because diversity destroys the race of both groups that mix and creates a new group with no history. They're just rootless NPCs with zero social cohesion, which is the perfect consumers for a commercial zone country that's actually ruled by we'll say NGOs and deep state equivalent. So, yes, modern Western stories have ended and non European stories are beginning, and their stories are of conquest, unless, of course, the West awakens and, hope springs eternal. Take the 77 Star Wars. Now use CGI to race swap the characters. Instead of Han, Luke, Leia, it's lesbian, obese, black, Chinese, Mexican. The story doesn't work anymore because blood is thicker than water. Han, Luke, and Leia looked like they belonged together. A mixed group looks like they would fight each other because the ultimate fight is going to be for your own people, and that's like 600 million years of Earth history. People are not willing to sacrifice and die, so another group's DNA makes it to the future. That's why globalist mixed group stories fail, because you have one mixed group on the Bankers Guild side fighting the other mixed diverse group on the insurance side. You've already lost. The different races would ignore the arbitrary external system and connect by tribe to fight the other tribe and the tribes that are controlling both. If you have a story with a diverse group fighting a tribe, even if the diverse group wins, eventually it will fall apart. So it's like they were doubly bad for destroying something that works. Maybe Star Wars worked because the stormtroopers were in costume the whole time. Otherwise, it'd be clear to the audience that they were the good guys all along. If the options are an empire full of my race versus a mixed group of dysgenic aliens, then I'm on the stormtroopers' side and rooting for genocide. And modern stories now have no emotional connection. Is we gonna die? My buddy and I walked out of that movie 25 years ago. I'm like, was that a Rastafarian? And then he goes, was that a Jewish character? And I didn't get that reference at the time. We were both kind of surprised that Lucas put those two characters in there. The thing is, modern stories now have no emotional connection because the audience is just too diverse. They're asking European Americans to root against the team and somehow believe the fiction that we're the bad guys when we know that we're the good guys. After all, it was us that created everything you see around you, everything good that has been destroyed by globalists pushing diversity. We have to be the heroes, and the nons have to be the antagonists. Otherwise, the story is just too silly to believe. The suspension of disbelief is so powerful it allows Wakanda and super genius Shuri. That was pretty much the peak of Hollywood power of illusion, where Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created that little bit of fiction. And now, obviously, it's falling apart. The image of the Marvels, where you have a black, there's the three characters is black, Pakistani. I'm not sure what Brie Larson is. Mixed European, I think. So you have three diverse vaginas running around when they should be at home taking care of the kids and making dinner. The thing is, making organic stories about resistance would be great storytelling, but it would not be politically correct to actually be honest about NGOs and big banking coalitions and media government connections to push this kind of Hegelian dialectic of problem reaction solution to get more and more control. I mean, it's like dystopian science fiction. It's I know it's kind of, I say that a bit, but you go back and you read stories from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s of increasing government control, and then you look at current day, you're like, oh yeah, those are pretty well predictive, weren't they? Or various. It's kind of hard to talk about this on YouTube. The Malamensei gangs in Europe that are fomenting their discord. So Western storytelling is dead because we've been brainwashed to accept being slaves to corrupt government and media. Every story has to be this sinister mirror world where diversity works instead of the real world where it destroys social cohesion and subverts and corrupts nations. Anyway, oh wait, there's a part in here where they go they go through all the terms and they go, why the terms are no longer starting to matter. That's because the short answer is because it's all garbage. Reboot. Okay, here it is. Reboot quill. It's all garbage. So what they're doing is just name recognition bait and switch. Where it doesn't matter if it's in canon, in context, if it's a sequel or not sequel. It's just like South Park 10 or 15 years ago talking about member berries. Oh, hey, I remember the thing. I remember Camp Crystal Lake, Jason with the machete running around, the ski mask. I hope I'm not mixing stories up here. Um, it's that thing, but now it bears no relation because it's all they swapped out the people. It's all a bunch of diverse girl power type of whatever. It's not the original vibe of the story, which can't be recreated like those 70s and 80s stories of like camping type of horror stories, and there were actually quite a few, or just camping, like kids go off. What was it? The Bad News Bears or something. Kids go off and play baseball or go off to some summer camp for like a decade. That was a genre of stories, was the coming of age summer camp stories. And you can't tell those stories anymore with a bunch of blonde kids running around because that's not the country anymore. The country has been changed so fast, and to its detriment, obviously, that stories require continuity. You could tell the story of what's going on now, but you couldn't. You'd be blacklisted in Hollywood. It's not communists who are being blacklisted now. It's the right wing who would be like, you never get that story distributed or funded, or there'd be too many hurdles to cross to try to get a story out there of like the Irish fighting back to save Ireland from the being replaced actually in Ireland, or even to the point of having to use so many euphemisms on Google's platform to not get that Wikipedia entry at the top of your screen, which is a sign of you're about to lose your channel if you get one of those. If you get too many of those kind of things, these are conspiracy theories. You know, they're not. I can objectively show you the truth. It's like, well, our narrative is that it's a conspiracy theory. And if you want to stay on the platform, well, thankfully now we have Odyssey, Rumble, BitChute, and a bunch of other emergent platforms, so things are getting interesting. Anyway, join us over at SubScribeStar, where there is no censorship over there, and where a lot of other videos and also articles are now up on my SubScribeStar. And I will see you guys all next episode.